That's where we fall into it as men if you have that past.
That's when a woman begins to reveal herself, open herself more, love more freely. But the point is that's what she doesn't want glossed over. If we just avoid it and move on, and we're like, she's going to get over it. No, she's not.
It is only by God's infinite grace that you can survive marriage without this foundation. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on another episode of The Catholic Gentleman. We are your hosts. I'm John Heinen here in Texas, which is still warm, getting a little bit cooler. And we've got Devin, who's up there in Iowa. Devin, how are you?
Good. I was thinking about going shirtless, but it's just a little chilly today.
It's just a little too chilly.
I didn't want to make anybody jealous.
That's right. I look forward to the next time we can get together in person. Maybe up there in that cold Iowa.
No way. I'll come south for sure.
That sounds good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, well, excited to be here with you today to talk about this stuff. If you listen to the secular experts, if you listen to marriage advice gurus, you're going to get led astray and likely wind up divorced or almost divorced. Today, we are discussing what couples never do before they get married, which is asking the hard question, asking these hard questions that we're going to talk about. It's our mission to speak the truth to our listeners, help them thrive in life and marriage, and to be honest against the noise of today. So we know what the studies are. We know what the truth the church teaches. Devin and I both have incredible wives and in a very awesome marriage. We love the sacrament of marriage that God has brought us to, and we want to bring some of those truths to you today. So if this is your first time, hit that like and subscribe. If you've been listening to us, you like what we're talking about, please hit that 5-star, especially on Spotify and on Apple. Both of those help increase the reach and expand it. If you write us comments on Spotify's or reviews on Apple's, that also helps expand the reach. Drop those comments in YouTube as well if you're watching our mugs here on our show. So finally, if you want to support, we could really use it. Head over to CatholicGentlemanPlus.com, where you're going to get over 30 sessions just solving things like spiritual warfare, solving things like sexual addiction and lust, solving problems such as why do we pray the rosary and what does tradition look like? All of these things we discuss inside of Catholic Gentleman Plus, and we'd love to have you in there. And again, it's a great way to support the Catholic Gentleman. So, all right, here we are. We have put together a very extensive list of awesome questions that every engaged couple should ask. But don't stop right there. If you're married, these are great questions to ask right now if you have not asked them already. I think that there's so much that I didn't know before I got into marriage. And now we put our minds together to come out with this list to help our listeners ask these questions with their spouse. And so I do compare it against the divorce statistics, which are still no good here in the United States of America. And why do people get those divorces? We've brought it up and it's before, but it's lack of commitment is the number one reason why people say that they get a divorce. I'll also say that 46% say that they got married too young. Okay, well, I don't think age is the issue. I think maturity, I think awareness of these things is possible at any age and at any marital age. And I think that we're going to help bring that up. There's also infidelity and broken trust, right? That's over the 60% mark is why they broke up. There's constant conflict and poor communications. That's right up there with infidelity. And so there's financial tensions and things like that. So we've broken these questions down. They're pretty awesome, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you guys. So Devin, before we get started in the actual questions, why do you think that this is so important for engaged couples, or for newly married, or for really anybody who's married?
Well, because no one wants to have a broken marriage who begins to start off to want to be married. Because let's just face it, the deepest longing of the human heart is to be loved by another and to love another. And that's what we want. And that's the dream, whether you're a man or a woman, and you get into marriage. And then if the marriage breaks down, separation, divorce, or even if you're living together amidst that kind of tension that creates a fissure or a long standing division in the marriage, we hate that because we're not being loved and we're not fulfilling our capacity to love. So what's at stake here is that everyone wants to love, everyone wants to be loved, but frankly, we don't understand the other person. And Kim and I, my wife, we say this all the time. Oftentimes, regarding the opposite sex, we don't know what we don't know. We just literally are not aware of the things that we don't know regarding the other. And so these questions in preparing for marriage or even after you're married, these are great discussion questions, allow us to understand the opposite sex so that we can find out to know what we actually don't know about them. Yeah. And then that way we can begin the conversation. But without that knowledge of what we don't know, we're in the dark, and that's where the problems occur.
I agree. And I think that this is something that my wife and I have had to discuss in marriage, right? Is like, oh, we didn't realize this about each other prior to getting into marriage. And so then that begs the question, which I'd like to ask you, Devin, is you and your wonderful wife, Kim, didn't discuss all these questions in engagement, is what I'm assuming. And so, what do you think kept you together? What was that foundational element?
Just to set the stage a little bit there, we were very broken, both from very hostile, kind of violent, volatile households. Both of us suffered from different forms of abuse, and so we clung to each other. We were looking for that affirmation, attention, and affection from one another because, frankly, we just didn't have it. So there was a wound, and we tried to fill that wound by leaning too heavily on the creature rather than the creator. We didn't even have a relationship with God at that point, for sure. Even toward marriage, I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ about a year before I was married. Okay, so with that said, I think that Kim and I, we've struggled throughout the years because this is very interesting. When we took our compatibility test for marriage, our priest told us we were the least compatible couple that he'd ever met. And he asked us to consider not to get married.
Good for him. Good for that priest. But that's
he actually spoke with me a couple times about it, saying, this isn't good. This isn't good at all. But what I want to reassure people is that, yes, we weren't compatible. And yet over the years, we've become most compatible. And why is that? Because the Lord has this incredible way of uniting people through self-giving love. And we have to understand this is God's vision for marriage. Why did he create it? He created it so that the two can become one. But what does that mean? Not just in sexual intercourse, not just in the one flesh union, but so he has something that she doesn't have. Therefore, she's in need. He has a need. He needs what he doesn't have that she has. And the two, by understanding their own needs and the fact that they can't fulfill their own needs, that's exactly what a need is when I have or want or desire something that I cannot fulfill myself, I have to go to another person. It's very humiliating at times, humbling, but then that other person can fulfill that need or at least address that need. That's self-giving love. God has purposely designed marriage so that what we do not have of ourselves, we lean on the other for, and we depend on them to be self-gift, self-donating, and by that, the two become one. Yeah. So in the incompatibility, in a sense, we can become compatible through self-giving love. So it's not like just because the two of you don't like to hike, or the two of you don't like the antique shop, or the both of you aren't into like exercise and health, does not mean that you're not going to have a great marriage. In fact, sometimes the two can be so alike and have so much compatibility, there's nothing to discover in the other.
Yeah. And this is the joy of marriage. The joy of marriage as I've come to experience it is in that self-giving love when we begin to understand each other in a whole new light, something very contrary even to what we presumed prior to getting together. I thought back in preparation for this episode on what was it that helped my wife and I get now 15 years ahead and still and be exponentially more in love and more a desiring of each other and more dependent on each other and more blessed and happy to be with each other. What got us through? Like what was it that helped us when we were unaware and inexperienced in so many of these matters that we're going to discuss here? And for us, I remembered it's that both of us suffered. My wife had suffered trauma. She had suffered abuse. She had had to go to counseling. She had experienced that and come out self-aware and stronger as a person. I had experienced suffering as well, different ways, right? I was in a coma. I almost died. I had my own difficulties and sufferings of sorts, and had come to depend on God to get me through it all. At the same time, so did my wife. And that brings me back to the next point here, is that our faith foundation was very strong for my wife and I. She was just praying constantly. She had discerned as a religious sister. I had discerned as a priest. But we both understood, even in our immaturity, the dependence on God, the dependence on Him alone, and so I don't want to characterize it in such a way that we didn't have a lot to learn when it came to authentic love and authentic sacrifice and self-giving love, as you just stated. But it was that that got us through it. My wife and I sat down with a priest during our engagement. He was with the marriage tribunal for 13 years, and he put together a list of questions that he believes every married couple should ask. They were more practical in nature. Like, we're going to go through, we've broken it up, you and I, into a more extensive way. But we did do that. Like, we did sit down and try and go through these and try and work through these potential problems in a way that started us off on the right foot. And yeah.
I think it's good because you have, John, you have the experience of coming into marriage, very faith-filled, very formed in your faith, both of you. And so you had a leg up on it, so to speak, right? And whereas Kim and I didn't. We married because we were attracted to each other. We loved each other, but it was kind of more of a very worldly type of love. And we had both had pasts and a lot of kind of unchristian living, let's just say it that way. So I think that that's good, because whether you're about to be married or whether you already are married, these two perspectives of being well formed and being brought up in the faith and having that, the two of you together, you, John, and Julie, or not, as in the case of Kim and I, and then having kind of radical conversions in the process of learning about one another through self-giving love, and embracing the faith. I think that could give everyone hope. So we're covering the gamut here with our experiences.
Yeah, so good. And so I want everybody to have a divorce-proof marriage. I want everybody to have a fruitful marriage, not just a divorce-proof marriage, but a marriage that is filling, that is something that is bringing you to heaven, and your spouse as well, something that you can rejoice in. And so with that, we have broken up this list of questions into 4 categories. Now, it's a lot of questions. So what I've done is I put them into a downloadable format that you can actually click in the description, show notes. You can go down, you can click on it. You can grab that, download it, print it out, and have a conversation. You could do what my wife and I did, where we both kind of filled out the questions separately, and then we got together and we had that conversation. Whatever you do, if you're engaged, make it not seem like you are trying to pin your fiance down and trying to get into all of their life without you being clear and honest about your life. And so we're going to talk about that.
What's at stake here is that you can pretend that or you, by avoiding these questions, you can just pretend that love is going to just conquer everything. And it does if it's real love, but you can turn a blind eye to the past and to what, in a sense, you're marrying in the other person, and just say, oh yeah, love's going to take care of it. I love this person. We're just going to be fine, et cetera, et cetera. What's at stake here is there is no way that past, those wounds, those beliefs, those systems of adherence, of habitual behavior are not going to come out when tension arises in your marriage. It's impossible.
That's right.
So
That's right.
you're not just marrying, in a sense, this idealistic person or this vision, the idealistic vision of the person you're going to marry. You are marrying everything about them. And so it's so important that you're well formed about that entire person, not to reject them, because if you're in love with them, you don't want to reject them. It's so that you can get through these things now, at least at some significant level. And if you need to go to a priest or a therapist and get counseling, whatever, you do it now, and you begin now, so that you can really truly embrace the entire I of that person, the self of that person, because that's, otherwise it's going to take place in marriage. It can be very, very difficult.
Yes, sir.
Very difficult.
That's
so
right.
we want to at least, whether it's like, when you, like, I've had IVs before on my hairy arms, where they tape it on and stuff. It's like, I've had nurses who've tried to take it off slowly, and you see my hair like exponentially grow, like by inches and inches, and she's like,
let's hold it on.
And then there's nurses who are just like, is like that. And I think that when you start to address these things while you're engaged or pre-marriage, that's like ripping it off much faster and getting it over with, in a sense. Then, and you always have to deal with it at some level, but it's a good dealing with. But when you bring it in marriage and you don't ever talk about it, and then tension arises, then it's like, it's a little bit of, it's being removed very slowly, very painfully, and you're going to lose a lot of hair.
That's right. So let's not lose that hair. Let's do our best to rip it off quickly. So you brought up physical attraction. Actually, that's the first category that I want to jump in here, because it was, I was the same, right? I was physically attracted to my beautiful wife, Julie. I still am. And however, we know that physical attraction is only skin deep, right? And that we have to still give of ourselves, and we have to understand how to love the body in its entirety, not just use it. And so, however, when we're talking about these questions, the first question that we're going to dive into here under this category of physical is, have you ever struggled with pornography or sexual sins? And have you sought to overcome these problems? So that's really the first question here, is you need to know the past of your future spouse, because knowing this can honestly answer a lot of things within struggles. But imagine if you didn't know that, and your fiance was still struggling with pornography, or you were still struggling with pornography, and you're about to get married, right? There's a disservice that you're doing to your spouse, your fiance, your future spouse, in that. And so this first one here is incredibly important to understand our pasts as we are about to forge ahead in a holier, more God-ordained future together. Devin, thoughts?
Well, I just think it's good that we start out with this category on sexual attraction and sexual intercourse and all that, because JP2, John Paul II, says these are the raw materials to love. So that's the raw material, is what we begin with. It's the nature, it's the instinct, the attractiveness. So that's good. So if anybody has an opposition to that, we're just starting off with our nature and the raw materials, as Pope John Paul II said, that are mandated or necessary for love. So it's excellent to be attracted to your future spouse or your spouse. It's necessary. That's the raw materials. Okay. So why is this a big deal with pornography? A little vignette, a little story. We knew a couple that was engaged. They were engaged for, I think, several years. And yet it was kind of weird, because he wouldn't really hold her hand too much. There wasn't a lot of physical affection. And he would assure her that he loved her, but she just was like, there was just no signs of affection. And from a very puritanical, kind of more hyper traditional standpoint, we'd say, oh, that's just perfect. That's so Josephine. And just like the St. Joseph marriage, he never touched her. Oh, like, give me a break. But, meaning, of course he held Mary's hand. I mean, this is, anyway, this puritanical approach is just ridiculous. But my point is that close to the wedding, that's when something kind of he was bumped and something came out, and he had this incredible pornography addiction.
Mm.
And because he was so steeped in it, he couldn't even look at her,
Mm.
hold her hand, anything like that, because that was the only way he knew how to relate physically, was through this hyper morbid, perverted sexuality. And
Mm.
so when she found out, obviously that was just too much for the engagement, because he had to admit that he, even in seeking help, he couldn't overcome the addiction at this point.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so why is this important? Let's just say either or, woman or man. Why is this important? Because in marriage, we don't want to be reduced to an object of someone
No.
else's selfish gratification. No person, as John Paul II said, in male and female, he created them. No person is the type of person that admits of being used, which he's saying that we don't like to be used. And, you might have some guys, I like to be used by, yeah. Well, let me put it this way. If your employer is gaining all the money and you're making $6 an hour and you're putting in 50 hours a week and your employer is getting rich off you, do you enjoy that?
Mm.
No, you don't enjoy that. Nobody likes being
used.
used.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is important, because if we are addicted to sex and pornography and lust and we enter into marriage, that is the worldview or the vision we have of our spouse. And we're going to look at our spouse as, okay, I'm just going to try to get anything I can sexually from, and then when that runs out, and it will run out, when that runs out, then what do I do? Where do I go? And that creates huge problems, obviously, in the marriage. And as you said, upwards 60% of people leave the marriage because of infidelity. And I think if you want to really be technical about infidelity, I mean, if you're talking about digital infidelity and all that stuff, we're up to 90% for sure.
We would be, without a doubt. And I think that even so, men who are listening to this, if you've had a past struggle with pornography, I want you to be praying about that too, praying that God's grace can help you forget and become detached, right, to your perverted image of intercourse. And actually that leads to this next question here that you should ask of each other is how do you understand marital intimacy, or how do you understand sex in marriage? Like, this is such an important question that we need to have with our fiance prior to marriage, because if it's all about pleasure and it's not about union, it's not about an openness to life, or if it's all about pleasure with this, oh yeah, there's the union and there's the openness to life, sure, we're going to miss that mark, right? We've got to bring them together. But right now in this first question, we have to understand where each of us are at, honestly.
Yeah, so important. So like meeting with young couples and hearing their stories, many of them learned what sexual intimacy should look like or how it's perceived from the movies and from pornography.
From the movies. Mm-hmm.
And so guys move into that thinking that a woman loves that aggression and loves that the aggression and just the intensity of all that, where that's not really real. I mean, I don't know. Just women love to be loved, and they love that tenderness, that gentleness, and that respect. When that's all involved in this sexual act, one flesh union, it can be very affirming for her. However, when a woman goes into marriage and she's a virgin and she has no experience of what that's like, and the guy is aggressive, and she can feel like she's been raped, or it can feel very abusive, and it can create wounds later on. We know many young couples that have had to work through this because of the way Hollywood portrays it. So these guys think that that's what a woman wants, and that is not what a woman wants. I'm just sorry, it isn't. Most of the time, 99, 95% of the time, that is not what a woman wants. So we have to put on our hat, the right hat, the true vision of how to love tenderly, disinterestedly, affectionately in the one flesh union, so that she feels emotionally secure in that moment.
Yeah, there was a Christian pop artist that came out recently, within the last month, actually talking about this exact point that you just brought up. He's
Hmm.
talking about it, that when he got married, he had his own sexual past and his own pornographic past. And when he got married and he was aggressive, he said that his wife immediately stepped back and was like, "What are you doing? Like, how did you learn that?
Yeah,
What are you trying to
exactly.
do?" And he said that he's crying now, like he's telling this story, and he's crying now. And he said, "I realized I knew exactly where I learned it. I knew exactly." And he's like, "And I just made this assumption that this is the time to act it all out, right?" And we bring it up on this show that
Hmm.
marriage is the remedy for your concupiscence, not the outlet for it,
Hmm.
right? And then that's where we fall into it as men, if you have that past. And
Yeah,
so
yeah. John Paul II says that the male sexual drive, it's a more violent curve. It has a more
mm,
violent sexual like arousal state, and so that means that he has to temper that. He has to learn to master that. So when we go into sexual intercourse with our wives, I don't have multiple wives. I have one, but with our wife, um,
wives,
in
as in the listeners
yeah,
here that have
yeah.
wives,
Um,
yeah.
we must approach it gradually with a
Mm,
hypersensitivity to her, and learn the things that actually affirm her, make her feel good. Like it could be many things. I don't want to get too descriptive here, but it begins
correct.
slowly, rubbing backs, whatever, caressing her hair, her face, whatever it is, but just making sure that she knows that you are into her and not
That's
it, that
right.
you
That's
that you
right.
don't want it, that you want her. And that's when a woman begins to reveal herself, open herself more, love more freely. Um, but when she feels like this guy is like just like this
Using
aggressive,
her. Yeah.
Hollywood star or whatever, believe me, it isn't going to take long before that well runs dry.
Agreed. I want to actually make a call out here. St. John Paul II talks about this exact issue in Love and Responsibility.
Hmm.
And so if this notion of treating your wife as another with her own needs and own desires, and that loving union and that self-giving of self uh, causes you a degree of uncomfortability, know that St. John Paul II in Love and Responsibility brought this exact issue up, and he talked about it as an authentic expression of true love within marriage is placing the needs of your spouse first, and of discerning that openly with them. And so we're just encouraging you to have this conversation about how you understand sex before you actually are engaged in it. And that moves us on to this next one here, which is again your past. And I actually would say, Devin brought it up right before the episode here, is that are you a virgin or not? Do you have a past with sexual trauma, shame, or brokenness that needs to be discussed before marriage? This was a very necessary conversation for so many couples today to have, especially in our overly sexualized, pornographic, rom-com, sort of world here. Is where are you coming at this with it? And I think that we need to know that on both. If you're a virgin, your spouse, your fiance is a virgin, in or not, or one is and one is not, like that's a conversation to have. If you truly love this person that you want to get married to, you owe it to that person to have this meaningful, thoughtful, loving, and respectful conversation.
Okay, so that's really good. So I can see a lot of women being like, "Oh my gosh, I've had intercourse several times, several different men. My boyfriend really loves me. He's really into me. We haven't had intercourse. I'm so afraid to reveal that to him because he's going to dump me, because
Hmm.
he's this great guy." Well, here's what I want to encourage you women to think about this. You do not want him to find out about this later in your marriage. A,
Hmm.
because it's just going to destroy things. 'Cause why did you hide this from me? B, you do not want him to find out about it on Judgment Day, which would alarm him when the devil is accusing both you and him before God, which is crazy. That's a crazy scenario there. So the key here is to have that. If he is such a good man, have that belief and trust in him, and tell him that I believe in you. I trust in you so much, and I want to share this with you. You know what I mean? For
Yeah.
the sake of our future, because he needs to be assured that he is the one. And so that's the negative becoming the positive is, yes, I've had these experiences, but they weren't the one. And
Yeah.
it was a mistake. I was looking for love in the wrong way, whatever, however you want to say it. But the negative proves the positive. You're the one. I want to save myself for marriage now, for you, because you're the one. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
So if we don't do that, it's like so basically we are defying the marital vows.
Mhm.
Free, total, faithful, fruitful. We're not
Yep.
giving ourselves totally to our spouse. We're hiding something, and we've really, in a sense, nulled the marriage from the beginning because
Yep.
we've withheld vital information. And so that I believe, I know I get we kind of wave the magic wand of the sacrament over the couple and say, okay, they're married, everything's clean and everything's new and it's valid. I don't know, man. I think if you are purposely, intentionally hiding things that your spouse should know that are
Mhm.
very important, pertinent to your future living and the future unitive bonding, and you're hiding that, I do think at a significant level that can nullify the marriage.
I appreciate you saying that. This is something, a conversation my wife and I did have before we got married. And I think that it is an incredibly good one. What an opportunity, though, to practice forgiveness, to practice
Yeah,
mercy, to practice your own awareness of self and how you respond to these situations, right? I think that it's when I first got married, I will say that it was easier, much easier for me to judge my wife and the difficulties that I had with her, and in all fields of marriage, not just physical, because I lacked a certain humility within myself, right? The more that I have grown in humility, the more I've practiced forgiveness and mercy, the more I've been aware of my own failings constantly, the less I see these 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 problems that Satan was definitely bringing up early in marriage. And so I just want to reaffirm what you're saying and the fact that forgiveness and mercy can only be experienced if this conversation is had. If it's not, and you're hiding something, you're doing, like you said, a disservice, nullifying, the the truthful union that you want to have with your spouse.
yeah. And I want to encourage every person, every future spouse. Let's say as a guy, you've just been trying to master your sexual thoughts and your desires, and then your girlfriend discloses something of her past that is not wanting, like she's had other sexual partners. It's imperative that you keep in mind that your lustful past. It's imperative that you keep in mind, well, did you ever use pornography? Did you ever masturbate? Did you ever do any of things? Because if you have, in a sense, you have no right to come crashing down on her, even though
Yeah.
another person was involved.
Amen. Hmm.
And so this is where St. Paul, forgive one another in Christ as Christ in God has forgiven you.
Mm.
And this is so important. And that love right there, as St. Peter tells us, covers a multitude of sins. And you get beyond that, then it's like, oh, she wants me and I want her. And even if those mistakes have been made in the past, we're moved beyond. And this is very significant too, because you look at Hosea, the prophet, he married a prostitute by God's
Yeah.
command.
By his command. Yeah.
As an analogy, and this is very important, what God does with humanity, with each and every one
Yes.
of us. Christ, the divine bridegroom, is in metaphorically, but yes, in a deep spiritual reality, wedded to his bride, who is a harlot. I'm a harlot. You're a harlot. We have all betrayed our wedding vows, our baptismal
Mm.
vows with the Christ bridegroom. So yet he forgives, he loves, and he even gives himself on the cross for that harlot. Okay, let's keep all that in mind when these conversations are arising.
Yeah. Amen. This is so good. So I'm going to just say we're moving past physical. There's more. Yeah.
Can we just have one
Please.
more thing? Because I think it's very
You want?
important, John. It's very important.
Yeah.
You need to discuss your vision of regularity of sexual union in
Yeah.
your
Thank
marriage.
you. Thank you. Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
because because I think a guy, well, I mean, I know this is
Nope.
generalization, but
Nope. You're right.
I think a lot of us are like, man, this is going to be great. We're going to
That's
have
right.
sex every
Daily,
day or
maybe
multiple
more.
times a day.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And the lady's like, oh yeah, I'm interested. I mean, that sounds great. There are some women obviously that are more like, oh yeah, every day, great, fine, okay. But for the most part, women are like, okay, a couple times a week, that'd be great. And then, after they have babies, it's going to probably change some more. So I think it's good just to have that conversation right from the beginning, because um, that
Yeah.
helps one another to understand each other's sex drive and their motivations there. Because if you get into marriage, you haven't had that conversation, you don't understand about your spouse, you just think that they think like you, they have the same sexual worldview as you, man, that's going to be painful, as it was for my wife and I after 3 babies. Then there was like, oh, what happened?
That's
So I
right.
think it's a very important conversation to have.
I agree. Expectations are so important right up front. Not a few months into marriage.
Right.
When tensions can build, because we can avoid those things. So there's actually more questions within this, like contraception, like being prepared for the demands of fertility, like understanding, post-child and post-multiple children. Like we go into those in this
Yep.
document that you can download below. Now, I want to move forward here, and I want to say that we've got 3 other sections. One of them is personal.
Oh,
The
we're going to
next
get
one
to
is
those.
spiritual and moral. And then the final one is going to be practical, and that's the money, the roles of husband and wife, the family culture, the daily life, those sort of things. So we're going to get to that. But jumping directly into the personal here,
Mhm.
you kind of already alluded to it. What I wanted to say was this idea that you're not marrying an ideal, you're marrying a person who
Mhm.
has experienced life a certain way, who has learned and contained a knowledge of life to a certain degree, has outlooks, hopes, expectations of the future already in their mind, and you are trying to discern and learn that, as well as explain your own to
Mhm.
your fiance during this time period. And so we're not marrying an ideal, we're marrying a person. And within that, that's what these questions are helping us do, get down to the heart of who the person is. And so when I look at personal, I think about wounds, I think about emotional maturity, I think about all those different things. But I want to ask this first question is, what did love look like in your family when you were growing up? I
Mhm.
think it's a really important one is, how did you receive love? How was love attempted and or displayed? And how was it interacted and received, both with your siblings, with you seeing it with your parents, seeing it between your parents and yourself? Like, this is such an important question to have, because it's going to help you understand so much about your fiance, about everything from how they expect love to be,
Mhm.
how what they're you hear the love languages. I bring that up, right? Where knowing acts of service versus physical touch versus time, like all of these sort of different love languages here. Knowing that about your future spouse, your fiance, at the beginning is a conversation worth having.
On the flip side of that too, I think is, okay, how did you guys handle disagreements in your family? How
Hmm.
did you handle tensions in your family? Was your family like didn't talk about it? I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of families that just, okay, we got a problem. We're going to pretend that problem doesn't exist. We're
Yep.
just going to kind of move on, and everything will take care of itself. No, it won't.
Nope.
Sorry, it won't.
Nope.
You bury it,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to come back up later.
That's
Um,
right.
or did everybody just kind of blow up and throw fits and throw dishes and throw chairs, and everybody goes bed mad? I mean, how did you guys deal with the difficult kind of tensions in your family relationship, familial relationship? So yeah, are I think things like my family, I came from a very physical family, whether it was negative or positive. So we hugged a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And so
Yeah.
my wife, they weren't used to that at all, but that was a very obvious one. But when you raise the question of what does love look like in your family, that's a tough question, like,
I like
so
that. I like your reverse of this, because maybe they don't know how to answer that, right? If we're being honest, so like
yeah.
it's entirely possible that when you approach that question, you've never thought about it yourself. You've never really thought about your family differences from other families versus what is love, right? Willing the good of the other, and how was that displayed accurately or not, right? Because I do know in growing up that if I asked my parents what is love, they wouldn't be able to give me a concrete, definition, right? It would have shown itself in certain expressions and certain allowances and certain forgivenesses and things like that, and all of those would have had an element of truth to it. But if we don't have that kind of core understanding and appreciation, so another way of getting to that, what I'm trying to say here is exactly how did you handle conflict? That's another question on my list here. Did you, and actually, how do you handle conflict, right? Not just the past, but like, how do you currently handle conflict? Do you need space? That's my wife. She absolutely needs space to digest. She knows that when I get zeroed in and I get focused, I can be a jerk. I can get it all.
No.
What do you say?
Bass backwards.
Bass backwards. That's right. I get it all because when I can dial in, and then I can just start bulleting off, this, that, and the other, this historical moment. Remember when this happened, blah, blah, blah. And I can, my wife absolutely needs time to digest. She needs space right at the beginning, right? She needs space. Like if we're going to have a disagreement and we're going to have, there's a conflict that arises, the worst thing that I can do for the sake of my marriage is just immediately bulldoze into that conversation, right? Even though that's 100% my natural go-to. Let's fix this now, right? Like, let's solve this. Let's get it all out, right? And so the fact that I'm aware of that with my wife, I actually, like, quite literally, when I will bulldoze my way into the conversation, within a few minutes, I will stop and I will apologize to my wife. No, she still needs space. Like, she's not ready to forgive because she knows that I did what we constantly talk about. She always says, "Don't ENTJ me," because that's my Myers-Briggs, personality. And she, and so I will apologize. I'm, by God's grace and only by His grace, I can become aware of it in a few minutes, and then I'll apologize. But I know that it could be a half a day before we come back to this conversation, like maybe longer. Like, my wife needs that time. And so I do think that this is so important to understanding, yes, from the past, but also from the current, especially when it comes to, conflict and understanding these things. These conversations worth having.
That's all really good, because you've grown to have this understanding of how your wife reacts to conflict and how you can respond, or how she's responding, and you can respond to that response. And that's what we're getting at here is to know how your family deals with conflict resolution, or do they? Do you come from a broken home? Is your family divorced? What effect did that have on you? Are you afraid? So let's just say there's you're a child who grows up in a divorce home, dad left or mom left. And so then you don't want to confront or have disagreements. So you just agree with everything because you're afraid that the future spouse, is always going to run out on you. Because dad ran out, mom ran out, whatever.
Right.
So I'm just going to submit over and over. Well, eventually that repression of your own feelings, wants, and desires is going to blow up, and your spouse is going to be like, whoa, where is this coming from? So it's very important that to talk about our fears from our childhood past. Like, I am afraid, like, my dad ran out on me. So I'm not, my dad didn't, but I'm just saying, my dad ran out on me. I'm afraid that is one of the fears, that you could run out on me. But the whole goal here is to figure out how to talk about it, because so if you didn't have good conflict resolution in your childhood home, you most probably will not have it in your marriage unless you learn to communicate about these things with your spouse. And so it's so important to talk about, like you were saying, wounds, fears, your family dynamic, what you didn't like, what you won't do, the chains that you're going to break, and then the chains that you're going to rebuild. Like, for example, there was just some things in my childhood home. I said, I am never doing that.
Yep.
I'm not gonna beat on my kids. I'm not gonna abuse my kids. I'm gonna be present to my children, etc. I'm gonna reforge that chain. I'm gonna make a new chain. I'm gonna break the old. So it's very important we have these conversations, because if we don't, then your spouse can be like, what are you doing? Why are you acting that way? Why are you so afraid of disciplining the children?
Yeah,
Well, I was actually abused when I was a kid.
that's
Oh,
right.
okay.
That's huge. Yeah, so actually on this, I want to actually bring up something that is incredibly important for the future husband, the future, us male in the relationship is, how did your father treat you growing up? I think that this is a huge, we're zeroing in on this question here. We understand, if you are listening in and you don't realize that you, as a father to a child, are the analogy of God the Father and how he relates to us. It is, and it's incredibly important for us to understand how our future father-in-law related to or treated our future spouse. And so, was he abusive verbally or physically? Was he loving? Was he alcoholic? Was he present but absent? Like, was he the one
Mhm.
who, did he not want to have kids? Did he, like you stated, leave out? Do that conversation right there is going to be huge, because it can teach you what triggers your wife, future wife, in these situations. And so, while all of us are on our own healing journey from an abuse and trauma of our past, it's important that you do your part to not exacerbate or to do something characteristic of something very traumatic that a father imposed upon their child, to your wife, to your spouse. And so I like to bring up that question, as focused as it is understanding we can do this with love. We don't have to, just berate our fathers. And that's not what I'm suggesting doing. But when it comes to that in engagement and interaction with the child, how was the father? I think it's such an important question.
Well, and I think that leads into probably your spiritual category, which I don't know when we're gonna go into that. But
That's the
I
next
think that,
category.
yeah, I think it's
So
very
yeah,
important that we both understand our own relationship with our fathers and our future spouse, or our spouse's relationship with their father, as you're saying, because that shines a light right on our relationship, our perception of who God the Father is for us. And there's nothing more fundamental to the spiritual life, and nothing more essential to the spiritual life, than how we relate to God the Father. Our perception of God the Father determines the trajectory of our life.
yeah,
And so if we think that God the Father is generous, we will be generous. If we think that he is trustworthy, we will be trustworthy. If we think that God is a miser, a taker, and he reaps where he doesn't sow, and he gathers where he doesn't plant, and so I feared you and I buried my talent, well, that's what's going to happen. Is we're going to live in fear of God, and we're going to be a man who wants to be feared,
hmm,
by our children and our wives. So it's very important that we understand where we're at with our human fathers, because that is an analogy or a lens, really, to our relationship with God the Father.
great. Other questions within this category that we're not
Mm.
going to go into is going to be things like forgiveness and how you experience those and how you deliver forgiveness. We want to talk, it's important to talk about stress and how you respond in
Mm.
stressful situations that are not just conflict oriented. Yeah, Devin.
Yeah, the forgiveness thing is absolutely huge. And so you want to get in fights before
Hmm.
you get married, because you want to find out how your future spouse is going to deal with disagreements. Because if your future spouse just digs their heels in and is resentful and stonewalls you, you can expect that that's going to be 10 times worse in marriage. And you can
Mm.
expect that that's what you'll deal with for the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life.
Yeah.
So the key is the both of you learn how to have disagreements in which you learn how to forgive one another properly from the heart. If you've got that underway going into marriage, you're going to have an incredible marriage.
Yeah.
If you do not have that, it is going to be very hard.
I'll admit that this is the one thing that my wife always comes back to, is that we just had a lovey-dovey engagement where we were
Mm,
just always
mm,
intentionally focused on the other and praying together. And we didn't have, if we had, we maybe only had it one time, and it wasn't what it became. And she will
Wow.
tell you that like, if she had to categorize all my failings, which are many, that this one was probably the biggest for her, was when we first started getting and having arguments, like real arguments, just how I acted and how I responded, and how unloved she felt, and how unseen she felt, and those things we've had to work through. And so I appreciate you mentioning that, because we didn't actually experience that during engagement.
It's so important. Women desire empathy, true empathy, and a sensitivity to where they're at emotionally. And if they, in a disagreement, everyone, or in a fight, or whatever it is, we feel betrayed at some level. The foundation of trust has been damaged, or maybe even broke at some level. And for a husband, that's my MO, is to like think objectively and reasonably and say, okay, point A is this, point B is this, point C, and see, now you can see why my conclusion is right. Okay. That never works. Okay. That lacks total empathy
I second that.
and a sensitivity to where she's at. And so I'm the opposite. Like, all we did was fight and make up, fight and make up. I was very jealous and insecure in high school, and because I was 5'1" and I was an idiot, but the point is that we had the opposite problem. But it was learning, though, oh, wait a minute, I am secure in my relationship with her. She does love me, but I need to be empathetic toward what she's experiencing emotionally. I've hurt her at some level, and I have to own up to that. This is a problem when we're rationalizing why we did what we did, and we're just, what we're doing is we're just glossing over the fact that we hurt her, regardless if we had the right intention or not. And that's what she needs to hear is, yeah, wow, I hurt you, and I actually had no intention of hurting you, or actually I was hurt, therefore I lashed back. Whatever you have to say there, and really mean it. But the point is that's what she doesn't want glossed over. Is, oh, you hurt me, please, let's talk about that, or whatever. And like your wife, my wife, they seem pretty similar. They need some time just to kind of think things through. But if we just avoid it and move on, and we're like, she's going to get over it. No, she's not. That there's going to be, it's like an iceberg, man. You might just see a little tip of that coldness, just a little tip of that coldness. But underground, she is frozen to you. She has no desire to engage with you. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, without going into more of my own failings, this is absolutely right. I 100% agree. And I will say that marriage doesn't fix our wounds, right? It gives that opportunity to heal from them. It can be, but it reveals them. And so we just want those revealed sooner, before you dive in. So let's jump to spiritual and moral here. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this section, even though I have 7 questions laid out. We're just going to pick up a couple of them so that we can spend more time going into the practical. But here in the spiritual section, I'm just going to start out with, what moral teachings within the Catholic faith do you struggle with? Do you agree with? Or frankly, do you disagree with? You need to know that. Like, if you or your fiance disagrees with Mary, or prayer to Mary, or any sort of relationship
celibacy,
with her,
Mary
celibacy,
priests, women priests.
Correct, exactly. This is such an important,
or even veiling or not veiling. I mean,
veiling,
it could be something simple as that, or Latin Mass versus Novo Sordo Mass, or whatever. Like these things are incredibly important to talk about.
Agreed. And I think that you're going to start realizing as you have these conversations that you're building a framework and an awareness around certain things. So like your current state, your spiritual bent, as you mentioned, Devin, about whether you're very rigid And Julie will always say that. I'm like, oh, I'm not rigid. I'm rightly ordered, and it's like, exactly. And so these are important things, right? So
Wow.
it's important to have these conversations ahead of time, and to also understand, like, so my wife was actually spiritually abused by a priest, and so that affected
Yeah.
a certain love of liturgy, or a certain appreciation of spiritual direction, these sort of things, because of that abuse that she suffered under the hands of a priest in spiritual direction. And that's important for me to be aware of, and so those sort of things. But I completely agree. Now I want to actually spend a little bit of time talking about prayer in a prayer
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
right, within this section, and
Mm-hmm.
that's incredibly important. So for me, when I was engaged, prayer was a checkbox that I needed to do. And it was theoretically very important, but it wasn't emotionally or relationally experienced to the depth that it was with my wife. And my wife's healing through her past trauma, she had a deep and intimate love of Christ and of our Blessed Mother. She taught me about St. Louis de Montfort's True Devotion to Mary. I had never heard of it until I met her. And we get reconsecrated every single year. December 8th is when I asked my wife to marry me, which is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. And it's because of our Blessed Mother that she has healed wounds and helped strengthen our marriage. But the point that I'm getting at is these were important conversations for me to have. I felt like I was in competition with my now wife in her prayer life. And that was telling for her. She's like, wait a minute, because I pray an hour a day, you feel like you're failing, or that you need to pray more? Because again, it was like this random comparison that was very helpful for us to have this conversation. Then honestly, it was very beautiful for me to witness within her. And then I actually found myself begging God to give me some of that, because I just hadn't experienced it. And so that's from a personal experience, but understanding your relationship with Christ, the Holy Spirit, God, the Heavenly Father, all the angels and saints, and especially Mary, our Blessed Mother, and Saint Joseph, her most chaste spouse. These are so incredibly important to deeply understand and to converse about with our spouse, our future spouse.
Well, I think fundamentally religion is about relationship. If it's not, then it's hollow. It's just a bunch of laws and rules. So rules are at the service of the relationship, as we say so often. But the bigger questions, or the more broad, macro questions is, who is Jesus to you? Because you're going to get the gamut of people who are getting married. They're not all like you and Julie. I mean, like literally my wife and I, it's like, oh, who is this Jesus? Who is Jesus to you? Who is God the Father to you? Do you trust Jesus? Like where are you at in your relationship with God? I think it's so important that we kind of discuss that, because like, if we don't, then it could be just like, yeah, we go to Mass on Sunday and it's great. Then we have the rest of the week to ourselves, but we just go to Mass on Sunday. That's what we do. Well, do you believe in the Eucharist? I remember when Kim and I, shortly after we were married, I asked her, she went to Catholic school her entire life. I did not, and so totally two totally different backgrounds. And I remember asking her after I had really I was on fire, for my faith and everything. I'm like, what do you believe about the Eucharist? And she's like, oh, we were taught that it was a symbol, a symbol of Christ and his. I'm like, no, that's not what the church teaches. That's not. She goes, well, that's what we were taught, at least. And they were, unfortunately, at some level, they were taught that, or at least caught that at a significant level. And so then that's like, oh, let's have this conversation now. And that was beautiful, because by having that conversation, we were able to appreciate the great gift that we were given by Christ in the Eucharist, that he gives himself to us. And we were able together to say, hey, maybe we should go to daily Mass more often, or maybe we should go to adoration. And then that became a backbone of our spirituality. And that incompatibility became most compatible because Christ was at the center, And so I think just the idea about, how do you relate to Mary? How do you relate to God the Father? How do you relate to Jesus? What do you know about him? Those are great conversations to have, because it reveals a lot, not only about our relationship, but what's maybe deficient in that relationship, or what we can learn from the other in what's good in that relationship. Because God wants to have an incredible, intimate, eternal relationship with us. He is eternal relationship. And so when we discuss that, that cannot help but to be a reflection on how we relate to one another in our marriage. Like if I believe that God is self-giving, well, am I reflecting that to my wife? Because I could just see it. I'm preparing for marriage. Well, yeah, I believe that God is eternal self-giving love. They're so self-giving that they're one. And man, and there's just like this life and this love that's just spilling out like a torrent from them. And she's looking at me like going, so you believe that? Yeah, I believe that. Why don't you act like that? Oh, good point. So I think that there's a lot that we can learn from just the relational aspect of what we believe.
Yeah, when it comes to the sacrament of marriage, I'm just going to directly state it that a shared faith is not optional, it's necessary. You have got to have a shared faith in Christ, in the teachings of the church. You have to. It is near impossible. It is only by God's infinite grace, overwhelming grace and mercy, that you can survive marriage without this foundation. And so having these conversations now is incredibly important for the future success of your marriage.
Yeah. How do you pray? Do you pray? Do you want to pray? I think those are important questions, because the two of you, at least at some point in your marriage, have to start praying.
That's right.
And you have to have time in prayer with the Lord, or else you cannot give what you don't have. If you're not, how do you, if I am to give God to my wife, how can I give God if I don't have God? How can I have God if I don't know God? How can I know God if I'm not spending time with God? It all comes down to prayer. So if the two of you are praying, separate, together, whatever, man, that relationship is going to usually, almost always, if it's true prayer and it's truly Christ you're praying to, or God the Father, there's going to be a unitive quality to that marriage that is just beyond this world.
That's the truth. So moving on to the final section here, which is practical. And within the practical, this is really important. There's a lot of questions here. So definitely go click in that show notes, click that description, do that download, because within this, we cover everything from money. We cover roles within marriage between a husband and a wife. And we talk about family life, and we talk about just daily life within here. And so I would actually like to lead by roles and leadership in our conversation right here with the remaining time that we have left. And so the first question is, what are the husband's and wife's roles and responsibilities in the home? And do you understand that man has been given the authority, and his the house and the family is under his domain? And do husbands understand what that actually means, and how to love rightly and how to appreciate? Like this would be a conversation, if not approached appropriately, can lead to disaster later, or intense conflict currently, but better than later. Yeah, Devin, you want to say?
Yeah, I think we just have to be kind of clear or qualify that a little bit, because we get a lot of guys who are going into marriage right now who are very like top-down authority. It's my way or the highway. And that's when we talk about authority, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about initiating authority of self-giving love, self-sacrificial love that does lead the way and pave the way through this valley of tears to the heavenly homeland. So like Adam was given the authority by God, and we can prove this hands down because after the fall, God approached Adam first, not Eve, because he was given the authority. But Adam also shared that authority with Eve. And so we got to be clear that it's a mutual shared authority, but yet it has different roles and responsibilities. And the man he's been given the task to have that overarching headship. Okay. And she has been, this is what, Castu Kanubi, and she is the heart. And so, to her, the question probably be this is what I framed out was like, do you respect and uphold his authority to lead your family as the head? And then to
There it
him,
is.
she can ask him, will you give your all emotionally, physically, spiritually to deliver yourself as Christ did for his church, for me? So
Yeah,
this is what we're talking about when we're talking about roles and responsibilities. These questions need to be discussed, because if she's like thinking, well, I, I'm not going to, you're not my boss.
that's right.
Like I'm my own woman and I'm going to have my own thing here and own whatever, and well, and he's like thinking, well, that doesn't really fit with my religious worldview. There's going to be a lot of problems,
That's right. No,
or
it has
let's
to
say
be worked
she's
through.
looking for a great spiritual leader, someone to lead the family in prayer and to protect her and provide for her and pray for her and deliver himself up for her. And he's just kind of like a deadbeat. He's like, I don't care about
Correct.
religion, or I'm just kind of like coasting through. Yeah, I'll go to mass on Sunday. She's going to be gravely disappointed. So it's very important to have these conversations now.
That's right. If his go-to is always, gosh, why do I have to answer all these questions, right? Again, that's the wrong
Right.
disposition for your husband and for the man of the family to have, right? So I like that. I want to just bring back up here to her. Do you respect and uphold his authority to lead your family as head? To him, will you give your all, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, to lead as Christ did his bride, while working on your own vices and mutual self-giving and love together? Those are important questions that need to be discussed before you say "I do."
Yeah.
Um,
If I was a woman, I would ask the guy right out, what do you think a woman's role is?
mhm.
And if I was a man, I would, and I would ask, what do you think a woman's role is? But vice versa, what is a man's role? Because so important that you flesh this out. Because if you don't, man, you could be marrying a Hitler, or
Yeah.
you could be marrying an abdicator.
Yes, and have some grace with each other, because chances are the language is not going to become readily available, right? You're going to have to work through these terms and this conversation together. So definitely, I encourage both of you to have some grace with the other as you have this conversation, because we live in a world that has distorted this notion of roles within the family structure, and just threw the whole thing out with the baby with the bathwater, and so we don't understand this situation at all.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, that raises another. What is your definition of a family? How does a
Mm.
family operate? What does that family look like? So essential.
I agree. And I think that this is actually one of the most essential. It's actually the one that I wanted to end with. So definitely download that document. We've got, income, dual income, single income. We've got who's the primary breadwinner. We've got, will one of you stay at home when children arrive? All of those great questions. But I want to actually focus on the family culture. There's a reason why I want to focus on the family culture. And the reason why I want to end with the family culture today is because of this recent study that came out just a few years ago that tracked 50 some families that attended mass every Sunday. And it was a longitudinal study, so a longer study that studied for many years, and which they all went to mass every Sunday together as a family, Catholic family. And only 18 of them, all of their children, continued on
Only
unanimously.
18 children or 18
Of
families?
families. Only 18 families had all of their children continue on practicing the faith. And so, of those 50 some families that went to mass every Sunday, only 18 of them had 100% of their kids continuing on in the faith after they left the home. And why was the question mark. And so there's a lot of studies and a lot of analysis that was done. And really at the heart of those 18 was this family culture, or this family vibe, or this family, understanding within each other, where multiple things that we brought up. There's another episode that we've talked about this exact point here. Their faith life permeated everything they did, with a sense of joy and purpose and a sense of intentionality, beyond just going to mass on Sunday. And so, parents were praying, they were eating meals together, they laughed together. There was like an understanding of, even in the difficulties of life, we're all Heinens getting through this together, right? And this is how Heinens respond, and there's that real shared bond and that shared unity that's grounded in faith. And so this is really important, because when we start going through this list of questions here, I do think punishment versus discipline. How are we disciplining our children? These sort of things need to come up within your family culture, within your parenting, so that you can better understand each other and get on the same page before children start coming. Because if it is just relegated, your faith life, to going to mass on Sundays and then getting home as quickly as possible so that you can watch the football game, and then never talking about your faith or your prayer life are separated, or like scripture, there's no Sacred Heart and Immaculate Heart in the home. There's no crucifix in the home. There's no CMB, chalk marks, Epiphany chalk marks on the doors, etc. Like, the faith life is so full, and it's so rich, and it's so incredible, and it's beyond anything that any of us can fully comprehend. But it has to be the primary focal point of our lives and our family lives. And what does that look like? And how does that come into existence? So if having children and getting your kids to heaven is a central goal of marriage, which it is a central point and purpose of marriage, then we have to understand how to go about doing that. And we are so blessed to live here in 2025, where we've got studies that help us even further refine and understand these things in a way that previous generations didn't have. So, Devin, talking about family culture and all of that, I'd love to hear.
So what are the questions?
Thoughts. Yeah. So the first one is, what kind of family culture are you trying to build? And I put in parentheses, meals together, prayer time together, shared work together, Sunday rest. What does that all look like for your family culture?
Okay, that's great.
The next one that I like to bring up is disciplining our children. I think that this is really important. It's within the family culture. If you spank and only spank, and spanking, corporal punishment or corporal discipline is the only way, you need to have this conversation. Is it corporal? Is it verbal? Is it structured? Is it conversational? Like, there's a lot of different things and different elements. And when do these situations come? So I had a humorous statement. My kids will say it. I used to call it spanking offense, right? And it was those situations that were very detrimental to their lives in future. And so we knew, to the point where we would be watching Curious George, and George the monkey would ruin somebody's livelihood. And the man in the yellow hat would just say, "Here's my credit card, I'll take care of it." But this guy's like next 3 or 4 months of their life is destroyed. They might not be able to feed their family. And the monkey just gets away with it. My kids would all look at me and be like, "That was a spanking offense." And so, there's like this sense of, but disciplining children is really important. So.
Yeah. I mean, so the questions probably would be is like, how were you disciplined? What kind of discipline did your parents, are you familiar with? Did they apply? Did you agree with that? Did you disagree with it? What are you comfortable with, not comfortable with? Because this is very important, because, love without discipline is what? Indulgence, and discipline without love is child abuse. So you got negligence and child abuse. So both are abuse. So we need to discipline. Discipline, it comes from the word where we get disciple, which means learner, so our children need to learn, and then so they can become apostles, which means to be sent. So it's so important that we have these discussions. Were you abused as a child? How's that going to curb, or affect consequentially the way you discipline, the way you relate to your children? Because if you just hands off, your children are probably going to be hellions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but if you're over authoritarian, if you're over disciplinarian, and you're micromanaging your children, you're going to create hellions too. So,
yeah.
So you guys, it's so important to have these conversations, but always with, what is the goal for our children? Is it that they go to Harvard, Notre Dame, or wherever? Or is it that they become saints? Is it that they go to heaven? What is the goal for our children? What is our goal for ourselves? Because all this gets wrapped up in the family culture and all of that. So yeah, child rearing is huge, but I think for us, one thing that we realized very early on was we're not going to allow the culture to navigate our children's lives. And so we decided to homeschool. And we're not the sharpest knives in the drawers, but we decided to homeschool. And as we did that, it was so beautiful because we felt like we were failing miserably. Our children, we were getting in arguments. It was combative. And our children, we just felt like we weren't giving them the education that they needed. And one woman, love her to death. She's so great. She said, Kim, to my wife, you are homeschooling for heaven. And that was like, that's what we believe. That's why we're having a family. That's what we have our culture. Right. That's why we're married. That's why we have intercourse. That's why we do all the things we've been talking about, is because we're leaning toward heaven. Amen. And I was like, yeah. And you know what? It's so amazing to see how the girls have turned out. They're just incredible human beings, and they are smart. I mean, they're very smart, both street smart and book smart. And they're not like a Heinen, but they're doing pretty well. So, but the key is like, look, understand, like you said earlier, understand your purpose, understand your goal. If your goal is just to have a highly intellectual household and God is like on the back burner, okay, well, then that's your family culture. Okay. Yeah. Then at least you know it.
Yeah, just to finish this. So I was so driven to do well academically, and I know what it did to my life. And so fortunately, that mixed with my love and passion of the faith, it comes up very frequently. All of my children know when I get those report cards, I take a look at them and we say, did you try your best? Did you do your best? I've seen you at home working diligently. Right. Your teacher's not complaining about you. And if they say yes, then I'm like, then great, because we are searching and going after holiness. Like that's at the heart of the mission of our family, right? Is holiness, is sanctity. And so my kids all know that. And to your point, it takes some dying to self to really lead with that and to lean into that and to actually live that. But these questions help us get on the same page.
It just opens up a whole new topic, because all I can see is all the parents who try to live vicariously through their children. And I just think that that's something that has to be talked about, prior to marriage, is like, are we going to let our children have their own lives, their own, like have their own talents and discover those? Or are we going to be like building them into a mini me, and trying to live my dreams through them? This is really important, because I've seen kids who've grown up, like there's this kid, he was an incredible wrestler, and like, I'm talking like all-stater all the way through junior high, high school, all Big Ten colleges, all the great wrestling schools wanted him. And his dad, he was living vicariously through his kid. His dad was a wrestling coach and everything. He got to college, first year, didn't wrestle, gave it up. And it was like, what the heck? What happened? It's because he was so sick of it, because he was living out his dad's dreams and not his own.
He was freed from his dad. He was liberated from his dad at that point. Oof.
Right. But can you imagine maybe if like his dad was more like a partner in that, had fun with him and didn't drive him so much, and then he went to college, he might have been an all-state or a wrestler in college, but because he was so burnt out because of the vicarious, I'm living my dreams through you. And women do it with their daughters too. And then you got mothers who just want to pamper their boys, or, we got that. All this stuff has to be talked about.
That's right. It's a good another conversation. So, Devin, I'm so blessed to have you to speak about these things with. So grateful for all of our listeners. Please click on that link in the show notes. Download this. Take a look at it. Send us your questions at podcast@catholicgentleman.com, because maybe you have some after you're taking a look at this.
Or literally your questions to add to our questions.
Amen.
So we have a more robust kind of PDF there.
I agree. I love that, and I think that this is just the beginning. And I'm so grateful. None of us asked all these questions before marriage, and all of us wish we had. And I will say that they would have definitely saved a lot of unnecessary discontent and tension and
Well,
unknowns.
well, it gets you. Let's just put it this way: it gets you further on the journey quicker. So,
Amen.
like rather than starting in your marriage from zero when these
Yes,
discussions and tensions arise, you're starting at 40%, 50%, and you're able then to continue the conversation. And you already have had these conversations, so you kind of know that. Okay, I know how to navigate this conversation better, rather than end up in World War III. You know.
that's right. And so that's the putting on the new man for this week. So every week we come at the episode here with a challenge for our listeners, putting on the new man as it speaks of in scripture. And so we want you to download this document here and read through it. If you're married, pick a handful of the questions that are worth discussing with your spouse lovingly. And if you're not married, then obviously that's what this is for you. So download it and make sure you find the time to intentionally find the time to have that conversation with your fiance. And so, so grateful for that time, Devin. Thank you for all your thoughts.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. You too.
Awesome. And as we end each of our episodes,
Be a man. Be a saint.